essentially get together with the people that can win this pitch as a team. And you put everything on a whiteboard, wherever you want, on a piece of paper to say, what do we know about this client that will help us win? This is not a technical audit or some kind of SEO audit. This is who's involved, who are the stakeholders, their pain points, the financial value we need to create to win this. What does the CMO want? What does the CFO want? Like all of that. And then you make that into a narrative in your presentation that will win you this pitch.
My name's Mike Lander, and you're listening to Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast, where we bring you actionable insights about sales RFPs, negotiations, and difficult procurement discussions from sales leaders, brand leaders, and procurement leaders. Please subscribe to get updates when new episodes are released. Freya, thanks ever so much for joining me on Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast.
Hi, Mike. Thank you for having me.
And this is, we're on the 7th of Jan, so you're my second podcast recording of the year.
Wow.
So I think it's a great way to start the year, talking to some new people, having some great conversations all about sales and commercial aspects. Why don't we just let you introduce yourself? So who are you? What do you do? And something unusual about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Freya. I run my own business called Be Right, based in Leeds. I'm an agency growth consultant. So essentially my work is always focused on growth, whether it's you are stuck at a certain level, your financial performance isn't where it needs to be, or you are growing, but you want to grow even more. So I basically go into agencies and figure out what the blockers are. So I speak to teams, I look into all aspects of the agency from new biz, operations, teams, client services, structures, finances, and present back what's going on and how to fix it, essentially. So that's my day-to-day job.
Brilliant. And we're going to talk all around growth in this podcast, particularly around the kind of revenue growth rather than the profit growth, but definitely around revenue growth. Most of my work at some point will touch on pitching at new biz, because you can't get around it if you want to grow or if you're stuck. So yes. Definitely not. So something unusual about yourself?
An interesting fact is always a bit difficult, but I think some people find it interesting that I am German and British. So I've got citizenship in both countries. I came over to the UK in 2008 to finish my master's degree, fell in love and stayed. So I'm a typical expat staying for love. And a couple of years ago, I went through the dreaded process of becoming a citizen.
Oh,
so I had to do the Life in the UK test, which is great. If you want to do pub quizzes, you gain a lot of knowledge for that. But yeah, that's maybe an interesting fact about myself.
Very good. Excellent. And we could have a whole podcast, I guess, on cultural integration and cultural differences and what you found. But let's not go into that, because we're going to talk about growth instead. Okay. Yes. So questions we kind of thought about in advance. So do you want to just talk about, from your perspective, client insights on agency pitches, and what do clients truly want as opposed to what agencies think they want?
Yes. So I guess just for a bit of context, so for the last 6-ish years, I've collected post-pitch feedback on behalf of agencies. And in that time, a lot has changed. So obviously we had COVID, we had the economy changing, we had cost of living crisis, all sorts of things, plus technological advances, AI, better data. So I think for context, for any agency, it's important to understand what environment they are in now, because what I'm seeing is that a lot has changed in the environment, but the agency pitch hasn't changed, and that's a big problem. So I think the first thing that I always say to my clients,
and it hasn't changed probably for
a long time.
From my perspective, I've seen my client for a long time. The same in consulting. Consultants are still pitching the same way they pitched 20, 30 years ago. Which doesn't adapt to, as you say, the current context of what clients really want and how they really operate. Yeah.
And just to go back, I've only been in the industry for 15 years. But even in that time, when I was still agency side, we had to change our pitch multiple times to adjust to the changing environment and to the advancements in the market. So One of my biggest eye-openers when I was agency side was when we worked with a consultant who ripped our pitch deck apart and said, this is not going to work. And our pitch close rate was pretty poor at the time, and it should have been much better considering how good we were as an agency. Yep. But we just didn't know how to put it across and how to position it. So I think understanding the context of the changing market is the first thing. It's a mature market, no matter what agency you are. It's a mature market, because whether you're digital, PR, creative, tech, dev, we're all pretty much the same. It's leveled out. Tech advancements, AI. So again, understanding how that plays into the pitch. So for brands, actually, it's really hard to pick an agency because we're all the same. That's the first thing to understand, is no one's really standing out unless you're very, very different.
So that's a common topic, by the way. So I've across all of the podcasts last year, one of my themes that I started to kind of pick up on was differentiation. It's actually incredibly hard now to tell one agency from the other. Like it's really, really hard, because no one ever wins on methodology, ever.
Exactly.
You're never going to win a pitch because you've got the best methodology in the world, ever.
Yes.
So how do you stand out?
Exactly it. And this
we've got great people. Well, everyone's got great people.
And that's exactly it. And what you just said there is the main problem, and that's the main feedback theme that I get in post-pitch feedback calls is, yes, the technical implementation and the tactics are fine, but then all the other 5 agencies in the pitch can do it just the same way.
Fine as well.
So what is it that makes you different? So I think, again, understanding what the client is really looking for, the pressures that they're under. Teams are getting squeezed in-house. There are a lot of decision makers hiding in the background in the pitch scenario that we often don't know, and they kind of pop up later on, and we haven't tailored anything to them. So I think the first step really is, or the first pattern of pitch feedback or common theme is, we don't know the context that this client is in, the context that we are in a changing market, mature market, where everyone's the same. So we're churning out a pitch deck. It hasn't changed for years. Is a credits deck, essentially, a deck about us as the agency and not about our client. That's the first thing that gets criticized.
So on this, it was really interesting because you actually interview clients where the agency has failed to win.
Yeah.
So your data is very specific to real pitches that actually happened where they haven't won.
Yes.
So I've got a theory. So let's see if the theory, as we start to have the podcast, kind of It's not a particularly complex theory, but it's something relatively simple, but very hard to do. What makes you stand out is the experience you give to the client in the actual in-person meeting. The proposal, whether it's an RFP or a consultative pitch, whatever it might be, as long as it's competitive, your proposal is just an order qualifier. Are you qualified to basically do the work? That's not how you win. That's basically getting you into the room. So once there's 3 agencies in the room, well, all that's left is the experience you give the client in that moment for an hour and a half that makes you stand out.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. And I would probably add it's the actual pitch, but also all the steps you've taken before that to have to actually create the win themes and to build the trust and to build the relationship.
Exactly.
And again, that's often where it falls down.
Trust.
So in the pitch feedback calls, quite often, so brands tell me which agency has won, which is always quite surprising. But actually, every single time they tell me, it was this agency over here. So I can really dig into, tell me what they've done differently. And it is often that they've nailed it at every stage. So they were in close communication constantly throughout the pitch. They've known all the stakeholders. They've
done their research. They've looked at LinkedIn.
They fully understand, this bit that I'm supposed to do, for example, digital, how does that fit into the bigger picture of creating revenue for this client or this brand?
Exactly.
And who else is creating revenue that I need to understand the context of?
So Freia, talk to me about this bit. Okay, so normally I let my guests speak most of the time, but this is a really fascinating topic. And I do a lot of this with my clients as well, as you know. Value creation. I talk to a lot of agencies about, have you articulated the value that you're going to create for your client?
Yeah.
And they're like, we're a creative agency, so that's really hard. I'm like, that's just an excuse.
Yeah, I agree.
If the CFO's not in the meeting, and there's 3 agencies, and someone's going to recommend spending $1 million with an agency, and the CFO says, well, which one's going to generate 5 million for us?
Yep.
If 2 out of the 3 couldn't tell you, but it was a brilliant piece of creative work, and the third one was a good piece of creative work, but they knew exactly what the route was to revenue increase.
Yep.
Yes, it will change, but they had a roadmap. Well, who's going to win? That's no surprise at all.
Yeah,
what's your experience of that value creation bit?
It's 100% what you just said. And again, in the pitch feedback calls, ROI and value creation is one of the big things that comes through. So if you compare 5 pitches, but one of them had an outline of, here are your top 5 strategic priorities that we think you need to go after. Yeah. Here's how we're going to do that. And this is the type of financial output or ROI that we know based on our experience, data, insights, good tools, good data.
Yep.
Here's what we think we can generate. But a lot of agencies are shying away from that. And they think, I can't promise ROI though.
But you're not promising, are you?
You can use your best logic. You can show, and this is where, again, the market comes into play. Data is so advanced now that if we don't use it in the pitch to forecast some kind of financial return, I wouldn't buy that. If I was the client, I wouldn't buy it.
If it was you and me on the stakeholder buying panel, and I was in procurement and you were the CMO, and the agency had no idea at all what the range was of revenue uplift or profit increase based upon $1 million of spend.
Yeah.
After the pitch, we'd sit down and go, they were brilliant. They were very creative, but we can't buy them. We're going to get fired.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they had no roadmap to value.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got an example where I've supported someone with like pitch doctoring, essentially like figuring out how to win a pitch. And it was that kind of 1 million example. So it's one of my clients. They're not a creative agency, but they're a software and app development agency.
Brilliant. Great example.
Same thing, really. Same principle of how you win a pitch. And historically, they would go into the pitch with a written technical outline of how the software would be made or how the app would be made. And that's their pitch. So I looked at all
just hang on, just pause.
Yeah.
Sorry, say that again. So they're pitching to win $1 million piece of work. Yeah. I'm not ridiculing anyone here at all, but I'm highlighting they're looking at it from their own perspective, not from the client's perspective.
Yes. So in their previous pitches, and hence why their close rate was low, it was a written proposal of the technical elements of the software and how it would be made.
They were probably brilliant. They were probably very, very good technically.
Absolutely.
Like really good.
Yes. So we turned it around. They had an opportunity for what they thought was going to be around £1 million in software development. And we didn't want to fall into that trap again. So we did what I call like a war room where we got together and we figured out how do we win this. And it turns out we didn't know very much
Freya,
about the client.
Do you want to just explain war rooms to the listeners? Because some people might not know what they are.
Yes. So a war room is you essentially get together with your pitch team, with the people that can win this pitch as a team. And you put everything on a whiteboard, wherever you want, on a piece of paper to say, what do we know about this client that will help us win? This is not a technical audit or some kind of SEO audit. This is who's involved, who are the stakeholders, their pain points, the financial value we need to create to win this. What does the CMO want? What does the CFO want? Like all of that. And then you make that into a narrative in your presentation that will win you this pitch.
Exactly. And that's the win theme. Yeah.
Yes. And with this particular client, it turned out at the end that we were dealing with one of 2 brothers, and there was also a father involved in a massive family business. And the father was very concerned about spending money because he was looking after the financial security of that business. Yeah. So the whole pitch and building up to the pitch became about financial ROI. So when is this piece of software going to pay for itself and make the company much more money than it does now to secure the financial future of the family, and building a relationship with this brother, father, stakeholder group. Whereas previously they would have just said, okay, here's how we build the software.
Exactly.
Do you want to buy it?
Yeah.
So they won
We're brilliant at what we do. Yeah,
for
exactly.
just over £1 million, because they really went in and built the relationship with the brothers and the dad, and they've spent days and days forecasting and using data to say this is when this piece of software will pay itself back and make you more money.
And thinking about risk and talking to the client about risk. Where are the risks and how do we mitigate those risks?
Yeah.
So I did one for a client 18 months ago. I still know the client very, very well now. It was a really big deal. And same sort of thing, a multi-million-dollar deal. I think it was an 18-month sales cycle. In fact, for the agency, it was a three or 4 year sales cycle. But same thing. It takes time to go through who the stakeholders are, to build relationships, to work out what their issues are. Everyone's got different agendas. How are you going to create value? How do you create different pricing models? Yeah. It takes time.
It does.
But you've got to think it through.
Yes. And I think that's the key theme for any work that I do with my clients, and I'm sure you're the same, is to move them away from the supplier mindset, so supplier pitch of, I'm a creative agency, here's what I can do for you creatively. I'm a PR agency, here's the type of PR I can do for you. Away from that and towards strategic partnership, value creation, ROI, stakeholder relationships. And not just in the pitch, but also in the day-to-day, because upselling to your client also requires that mindset of, I'm not your supplier. I'm not here for you to tell me what I should do next week. I'm here to use my data and my experience and my insights to keep growing your financial value as a business. So I think it's a bigger mindset, and the agencies that are pitching as a supplier are also often delivering work as a supplier as opposed to a strategic partner. So it's a bigger problem than just fixing a pitch. It's a company-wide issue. Yeah.
So there's a few themes coming out now, kind of like we're at about kind of 15 minutes or so into the recording. So if I'm right, just to kind of feedback to see if I've got the kind of right messages. Value creation, critical. And that's thinking about value from the customer's perspective.
Yeah.
Stakeholder engagement, stakeholder management, whether it's RFP driven or whether it's consultative sale driven, you need to understand who the stakeholders are. Experience on the day when you're actually in the room, an engaging experience. And I would say the other thing that we haven't mentioned, but it's something I've seen quite a lot, is the ability to problem solve on the day.
Yeah.
Is talk about the big issues that you've researched, talk about those as an industry level and how other companies are facing similar problems.
Yes.
Talk about what we find that other companies face and how they resolve those issues. And dynamically problem solving with the client. The client doesn't care what the answer is in that session. They care about your ability to think it through and your confidence to think it through.
I mean, if every pitch was like that, it would be amazing. But unfortunately, the client doesn't even speak in the pitch. It's just the agency. So we're filling the whole hour and a half that we have available with just bombarding them with information. Quite often, 50 slides on audits and analytics that no one needs to hear, when we should leave 20-30% of the time just speaking to the client, just having a chat. Are we on the right track? What do you think? What are we missing? But
so
that never happens.
Here's a question for you then. When you're pitching to your clients, when you're trying to win work, as I do as well, we both pitch for work, over a series of interventions that you've had before you actually get a piece of work, in my experience, there's normally one thing that they say, you keep saying this thing, and that thing's really important to us. Just dig into that a bit more. But there's always something that they remember amongst all of the stuff we've gone through over maybe 5 meetings and maybe 30 slides and 20 emails. There'll be something, one big thing that they go, that's why I need you.
Yeah.
It's not 30 things. It's normally one big thing.
Yes.
Is that what you find?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because you're probably the same. But when clients come to me, they just know that the numbers aren't right. The agency isn't working in the way. So
they don't know what the problem
is. They don't know why. But when you listen objectively, it's quite clear from the first couple of conversations what the problem probably is.
It is.
And that will become the narrative. And yes, you will do other things.
Yes, of course.
Around that. But that's the big thing that you can go with and that you can pitch, essentially. Yeah, absolutely.
Because they've got to go and talk to their bosses and their investors and shareholders and friends.
Yeah.
They need a little story they can tell about what the problem is and why they've brought you in to fix it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it has to become that simple. So we could talk for a long time on this. And I will be probably coming back to you in the future also about client insights. Have you written, just out of interest, a thought leadership paper around all of the interviews you've done, anonymized, and aggregated the themes?
No,
the listeners would be fascinated.
I haven't yet, and I know this is something I need to be doing.
You should write it, yes.
I use those insights in pretty much every talk I do about pitching.
Right.
I haven't written them into an actual downloadable paper or anything like that. Yeah, not yet anyway.
Good target for next year. For this year, rather, definitely.
I agree.
So, last question. So, qualification strategies and signs of pitch success probability. So, we've gone through quite a lot of where the problems are and how to fix them. So, very practical. But do you want to talk about, when you're going through that process, what are the kind of things that you look for that say, our win probability is going up during this process?
Yeah, you could, I could kind of tell you a list that probably you and most of your listeners have heard before around the themes. But I think if you're an agency and you're listening to this, I would think about what are you worried about and why are you losing pitches? And then that becomes your qualification list. So for example, it turned out they didn't really have a budget, or they didn't have a budget signed off, or one person thought they had a budget, but another stakeholder didn't know yet. So that becomes your budget questions.
Exactly.
Then, there was a stakeholder that we didn't know. They came to the pitch in the end and they actually made the decision, but we didn't know. Again, next time, that's your qualification question of who was involved, who was going to make the decisions. They weren't ready.
The incumbent agency won.
Yeah.
Didn't you know there was an incumbent? We didn't know there was an incumbent agency. No.
Exactly that. So again, another typical one, they thought they said to us they need SEO. But actually, they bought some kind of integrated digital service that we can't fulfill. Again, we should know this much earlier.
Exactly.
So just think about what are the common barriers, the issues, or ghosting. We were ghosted. Okay, well, have you checked that they were ready to buy, or were they just popping around? So that becomes your list of, how likely is it that this is going to lead to anything? If we already know in our last 20, 30 pitches, these were the common things that we should have known, but we didn't know.
Yeah.
So it's
like
always
another simple one.
Yeah.
Did the client tell you what their selection criteria were?
Yeah.
So it's like, well, no, but how would they know? Well, if they don't know what the selection criteria are, how on earth are they going to choose?
Yeah. Yeah.
It'll just it'll be the most powerful stakeholder that decides if they've no selection criteria.
So on my list of questions that I always ask in pitch feedback calls, one of the first ones is, what was the selection criteria?
Exactly.
And they always tell me, but then my client never knows.
Never knows.
So they do have that. And if they don't, you're absolutely right.
Did you ask the client? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they hadn't written it down, but that doesn't mean they haven't got them.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So I think just generally thinking about those things rather than just going through a generic list of, I need to ask about stakeholders, need to ask about timelines and budgets. Think about why you lose and then make those questions really detailed and dig into them and really find out, are you ready to buy? Who am I pitching against? So don't just go through a checklist of, do we want to pitch for it, but go through a checklist that tells you, are we likely to win it?
So I often, at the start of an agency relationship around growth, what I've always done is gone through and done a win-loss analysis. So I say to them, right, give me 5 big opportunities. Give me 2 that you won and 3 that you lost. And I've got a 37-point checklist. And I go through it and I mark their proposals against the RFP or the kind of the pitch document, the request from the client.
Yeah,
and then I give them feedback. And it comes out with win themes and loss themes. Why did you win and why did you lose? And they're very common as you go through clients.
Yeah, I love that. Just like checking back homework kind of thing. Yeah.
It's marking back the homework.
Yeah.
So, Freya, this has been fantastic. We're about 25 minutes. So what we do. For agencies that are listening out there, agency leaders, or anyone in professional services, because it's broader than agencies, it's anyone selling professional services, this applies to in many ways, is if a CEO is listening and there may be 50 people and they're growing to 100 is the aspiration, but their win rates are down, they don't really know why. What are the kind of 3 things that you take away from this kind of session that they should be thinking about during January, as we're now on the 7th of Jan 2025? What do you think the 3 big things are?
If they don't know why, I think get someone in who knows. And I'm not trying to advertise your or my services here, but if you genuinely don't know, you need to find out. So either start collecting pitch feedback, come up with your own conclusions as to why you're losing, or get someone in who will just look at your last 5 proposals and they will tell you straight away because they've seen it before. So once you know your reasons, I think do a full review of how you pitch from start to finish, from qualification to win themes to war room to how you structure your pitch deck, how your brand looks, like the whole thing. And then continue to collect pitch feedback so you can see if it's improving. And see if your close rate goes up. So I think really, if January is your time to rethink how you pitch, I would just do a full review step by step.
Definitely.
And get someone in who knows this stuff. And ideally also for the pitch doctoring. So get someone to tell you where it's falling down, why you're not winning. And when you have a live pitch, get them in again to help you with the live pitch opportunity so you can put it in practice and they hold you to account and they pretend to be the client and they will challenge you on what's in the pitch deck.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so just some simple stats from me about the data I've collected, see if it correlates with yours. For every 10 opportunities that you're looking at that are proper opportunities, not some random inbound that's completely unqualified, but from every 10 that are reasonable opportunities, my rule of thumb is you qualify out 3 or 4. We're not bidding for those 3 or 4. Of the 6 that we bid for, we should be winning at least 3.
Yeah, 50% is my rule of thumb as well. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Of qualified leads. Yeah. And the qualification out is really important. So you're only working on things that you can stand a good chance of winning.
Yes. And just, I know we're running out of time, but I guess that's another point to say is a lot of agencies are stressed and there's pressure on capacity and resource in the teams because they're doing too many pitches. Because they shouldn't be pitching for half of the stuff that's coming in. So it's really expensive. It's a time waster. So I totally agree with you. They need to qualify out more and put more effort into the ones that they really need to win, the ideal client, the better contracts. It's a massive squeeze on what should be chargeable resource on clients that is being dragged into pitches that are pointless.
And I think the problem is it's a compounding effect. The pipeline's thin. We need to win more work.
Yep.
We're going to bid for everything because it's thin. Yes. Oh, but the win rate's going down and down and down. Our teams are exhausted because they're working on clients and on pitches, and they're now depressed because we don't win. Mm-hmm. So you get this very rapid downward spiral.
Yeah, that's horrible.
And you're better off saying, we're going to step back, we're going to re-look at our ICP, we're going to qualify properly, and we're going to work on the things we can win.
Yeah, agreed.
Freya, it's been amazing. I definitely want to follow up with you. It's been really good. Really, really good. Your insights from the client feedback that you collect is really, really good. Brilliant.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's been great.
So thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you. So where can people find out more about you?
Find me on LinkedIn, connect with me, and I'll go to my website, berate.com. But it's better to just go on LinkedIn.
Go on LinkedIn and find you. Exactly.
LinkedIn is where it's happening for me. Yep.
It is. Freya, it's been fantastic. Thanks ever so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast series with your host, Mike Lander. Please subscribe so that you'll catch all the next episodes.